right, everyone, settle in. Put the lattes down, close the TikTok tabs. Yes, even you in the back, I see the glow reflecting off your glasses, and let's get into it. Today we're diving into a text that most people think they know, but almost nobody actually understands. We're looking at the devotional study of the Psalms, prayer and praise. Now, here's the hook that's going to ruin your Sunday school memories. Most people think the book of Psalms is just a collection of nice flowery poems meant for cross-stitch pillows or Hallmark cards. You know the vibe. The Lord is my shepherd. Everything is green pastures and still waters. Very lo-fi beats to study/relax to. But if you actually read these annotated pages, this notebook of David's life, you'll realize the Psalms aren't a spa day. They're a combat manual. They're the raw, unfiltered, occasionally violent, and deeply anxious journals of a man who was simultaneously a king, a rock star, and a fugitive with a massive price on his head. Think of it like this. If your life was a movie, the Psalms would be the soundtrack. But it isn't the upbeat pop montage. It's the gritty, rain-slicked noir scene where the protagonist is hiding in a dumpster, wondering if the villains are around the corner. We're talking about David, a man after God's own heart, who also happened to be a mess. This notebook blends the biblical text with these things called prayer declarations, which are basically the ancient version of manifesting, but with a lot more theological teeth. Let's start at the very beginning, Act 1, if you will, the foundational architecture of the human soul. Look at Psalm 1. It sets the stage by creating this massive binary divide. It's not about being nice or mean, it's about being rooted or rubbish. The text tells us the godly man is like a tree planted by rivers of water. Think of it like your Netflix algorithm. If you feed it garbage, it suggests garbage. If you delight in the law of the Lord, you're building deep roots. The ungodly? They're chaff. That's the dusty stuff that blows off the wheat. In contemporary terms, they're the viral for 15 minutes crowd. Here today, gone with the next trend. And then we hit Psalm 2, which is essentially the 10th century BC version of a political thriller. The heathen rage, the kings of the earth are plotting, and how does God respond? He laughs. It's the ultimate I'm the captain now moment. The lesson here isn't just don't be a rebel. It's that there's a sovereign reality that makes human posturing look like a toddler's temper tantrum. Now, here's where it gets weird, and stay with me, because this is the pivot. We go from these big cosmic themes of good versus evil and kings versus God straight into the mud of personal trauma. Acts 2, the fugitive's journal. Psalms 3 and 4 are fascinating because of the context the notebook gives us. David is fleeing from his own son Absalom. Imagine that for a second. Your own kid has staged a coup, you're running for the hills, and everyone's saying, there's no help for him in God. David's response? But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me. He goes to sleep. That's a level of main character energy we should all envy. He's surrounded by thousands of enemies, and he's getting his 8 hours of shut-eye because he knows who's actually holding the shield. The study notes point out these prayer declarations, like the one in Psalm 4. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. It's a psychological reset. It's David saying, I'm not in control, and that's why I can actually rest. But don't think David was some stoic robot. Look at Psalm 6. This is the dark night of the soul stuff. He says, my soul is also sore vexed. I am weary with my groaning. He's literally crying so much his bed is swimming in tears. It's a bit dramatic, sure. He's a poet. Give him a break. But it's honest. It's a repentance and confession moment. The notebook highlights that confession isn't just about saying you're sorry. It's about acknowledging God's greatness while you're in the gutter. It's the I'm a disaster, but you're the master vibe. Yes, this will be on the exam, specifically how David's physical health seems tied to his spiritual state. He talks about his bones being vexed. It's the original psychosomatic study. If his soul is out of whack, his body feels it. But I digress. Back to the point. Moving into Act 3, we see David dealing with the others. And by others, I mean the people who are actively trying to ruin his life. Psalm 7 is about Cush the Benjamite. We don't know exactly who he was, but David clearly didn't have him on his Christmas card list. He's asking for justice. He's saying, if I've done something wrong, let the enemy tread down my life. But if I'm innocent, get him, God. It's this raw, eye for an eye energy that eventually gets refined, but at its core, it's a cry for a world where things actually make sense. And then, bam, we hit the palate cleanser. Psalm 8. This is the one you've seen on posters of the Milky Way. When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars. What is man, that thou art mindful of him? Think of Psalm 8 like the Hubble telescope of the ancient world. David looks up and realizes he's a tiny speck on a tiny blue marble, yet he's crowned with glory and honor. It's the ultimate cure for an ego trip. You're insignificant in scale, but infinite in value. It's a paradox that would make a philosophy major's head spin. He moves from what is man to how excellent is thy name in all the earth. It's this beautiful vertical shift in perspective. But because this is David, he can't stay in the stars for long. He's got bills to pay and enemies to dodge. Acts 4. The problem of the wicked. Psalms 9, 10, and 11 are where the social justice themes start to scream off the page. In Psalm 10, David asks the question we all ask when we watch the news. Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? The wicked are out here hunting the poor. They're boasting of their heart's desire. They think they're untouchable. They're the 1% of the 1% who think the rules don't apply to them. David describes the wicked man as someone who says in his heart, God hath forgotten, he hideth his face, he will never see it. They're basically the internet trolls of the 10th century, hiding in secret places to murder the innocent, thinking there's no accountability. But David isn't just complaining, he's building a case. He's like a divine prosecutor. He's saying, Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up thine hand, forget not the humble. And then Psalm 11 gives us the internal refuge strategy. When things are falling apart, when the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? David's answer isn't run for the hills, even though his friends suggest it. His answer is, the Lord is in his holy temple. It's a commitment to a reality that is higher than the current crisis. I know. Bear with me. This sounds like a lot of heavy lifting for a Tuesday morning, but look at how the notebook structures these prayer declarations at the end of each section. They're meant to be spoken. It's theology in the mouth. For example, after Psalm 9, the declaration is, Lord, you are my refuge in times of trouble. I trust in you. I know that you will never fail nor forsake me. It's about moving the information from the head, the annotated notes, to the heart, the meditation, to the hands, the action. It's a technology for resilience. So, what have we actually learned from this collection of ancient hits? We've seen that the godly life isn't about being perfect. It's about being oriented. It's the difference between a compass and a weather vane. The weather vane, the ungodly, spins wherever the wind blows. The compass, David, despite his flaws, always snaps back to the north. We've seen that it's okay to be sore vexed. It's okay to cry until your bed floats. It's okay to ask God why he's hiding. Because the Psalms give us a language for the ugliest parts of being human. They don't sanitize the experience. They tell us that you can be shapen in iniquity. Like the notes for Psalm 51 might say, spoiler alert for next week's lecture, and still be a man after God's own heart. The core lesson of this entire notebook, prayer and praise, is that the two are inseparable. You can't have the praise of Psalm 8 without the prayer of Psalm 3. You can't have the victory of Psalm 9 without the vexation of Psalm 6. It's a holistic ecosystem of faith. Think of it like this. Your life is a series of selahs, those little pauses David puts in the text. They're moments to stop, breathe, and recalibrate. Whether you're a tree by the water today, or you feel like chaff blowing in the wind, the invitation of the Psalms is to stop looking at the heathen raging and start looking at the shield that's being held over you. Now, before I let you go to your next class, and please try not to walk into any walls while you're staring at your phones, I want to leave you with a thought for your own Selah. If your life was annotated right now, what would your prayer declaration look like? Would it be a cry for justice, a song of cosmic wonder, or just a desperate request for a good night's sleep? The Psalms suggest that all of those are valid. The only thing that isn't valid is staying silent. All right, that's the lecture. If you have questions about the exam or David's choice of harp strings, come see me during office hours. Otherwise, get out of here. Stay rooted, don't be chaff. See you next time. All right, everyone, settle down. Put the phones on silent, unless you're live tweeting my brilliance, in which case, carry on. Today, we're diving into a notebook titled Psalms Study Guide, Prayer Declarations and Worship. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Professor, isn't the book of Psalms just a collection of ancient Hebrew greeting cards? A bit of dusty poetry for people who enjoy stained glass and uncomfortable pews? Wrong. That's the first misconception we're tossing out the window today. If you actually look at these documents, and I mean really look at them through the lens of this study guide, the Psalms aren't just nice thoughts. They're more like a tactical manual. They're a survival guide for the soul that reads like a cross between a military debrief and a high-stakes legal brief. We're talking about weaponized joy. Think of it like a cheat code for reality. You know how in some video games you can find a specific sequence of buttons that suddenly makes you invulnerable or gives you infinite stamina? That's exactly how this guide treats the Psalms. It's not just about reading them. It's about declaring them to shift the atmosphere. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets interesting. Let's look at the foundational block of this collection, which covers Psalms 12 through 15. In these early chapters, David, the guy who wrote most of these, is basically living in a spy thriller. He's surrounded by flattering lips and double hearts in Psalm 12. If David were alive today, his X, formerly Twitter feed, would be a nightmare of bots and trolls. But look at his response. He doesn't just complain. He reminds himself that God's words are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth. He moves from the panic of Psalm 13, where he's literally asking, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever?" to a structured legal declaration of trust. It's a total psychological pivot. The study guide emphasizes that these aren't just moods, they're restorations. By the time we hit Psalm 14 and 15, we're looking at the fools who say there is no God and the requirements for actually standing in a holy hill. It's like a VIP list for a cosmic club. You want to get in? You've got to walk uprightly and speak the truth in your heart. I know, Professor, this sounds like a lot of rules. But wait until we get to the heavy artillery in Psalm 18. This is arguably one of the most cinematic pieces of literature ever written. David is in deep trouble, and what does he do? He calls out, and God doesn't just send a polite email back. The text says, "The earth shook, smoke came out of his nostrils, and he rode on a cherub." A cherub, think of it like the ultimate cosmic Avengers Assemble moment. Now, here's the kicker the study guide wants you to grab: the prayer declarations. Scattered throughout these files are specific scripts. For instance, after reading Psalm 18, you don't just say that was nice. You declare, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer." The guide treats this like a legal activation. It's the idea that your words have the power to set victory in motion. It's basically the spiritual version of, "I'm not just a member, I'm the president." You're claiming an identity. But why the singing? Why the worship? I mean, if I'm in a fight, my first instinct isn't usually to break into a Broadway show tune. But that's where Act 3 of our lecture comes in: the Jehoshaphat principle. The guide spends a lot of time on 2 Chronicles 20 to explain why the Psalms are structured for worship. King Jehoshaphat was facing a massive army, 3 different nations coming to wipe him out. His strategy? He put the choir in the front. Yes, you heard me. He sent the singers out ahead of the soldiers. Imagine being in that choir. "Hey Gary, you take the high tenor note. And also, try not to get hit by that spear." But the guide points out something fascinating. The moment they started singing, the spiritual realm shifted. Their enemies got confused and started attacking each other. The analogy here? Worship isn't a warm-up for the main event. It is the main event. It's a two-edged sword. The study guide suggests that praise is actually a form of spiritual warfare that beats back the powers of darkness. It's like an acoustic shield that confuses the enemy algorithm. I digress for a second. Did you know that David's 10-stringed instrument, mentioned in Psalm 144, was basically the Gibson Les Paul of the Iron Age? He was literally a rock star king, using his music to stabilize his mental health and his national security. Back to the point. The guide then moves us into the deep, dark woods of Psalm 22. This is the my God, why have you forsaken me?" Psalm. It's raw. It's the sound of someone hitting rock bottom. But even there, the guide shows how the declarations function. It moves from "I am a worm" to "He has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted." It's a roadmap for emotional processing. It's about taking the most miserable situation possible and finding the worship hook that pulls you out of the pit. So, let's talk about the royal priesthood concept mentioned in these notes. This is a big one. It's the idea that as a believer using these psalms, you aren't a victim begging for a handout. You're a priest king enforcing a victory that's already been won. The guide says the battle is not yours, but God's. You're essentially the legal representative of a higher power. When you use the high praises of God in your mouth, you're binding kings with chains. It's a very high-octane view of human agency. Think of it like this: your Netflix algorithm. If you keep watching sad documentaries about melting ice caps, your recommended list is going to be depressing. The study guide argues that complaining is like feeding a bad algorithm. Declarations and worship are like manually resetting your feed. You start declaring Psalm 19, how the heavens declare the glory of God, and suddenly you're looking at the sun and the stars differently. You're changing the metadata of your daily life. By the time we get to the final Psalms in this set, Psalms 20 and 21, we're talking about saving strength and heart's desire. The king rejoices in God's strength. It's a complete 180 from the "How long, Lord" of the earlier chapters. The prayer declaration for Psalm 20 is particularly bold. Some trust in chariots, and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. It's a total rejection of conventional power structures. It's saying, yeah, you've got the tech, the money, and the influence, but I've got the new song. So, what's the big takeaway here? What's going to be on the exam of life? It's the realization that these Psalms aren't just a record of what happened to some guy named David 3,000 years ago. According to this study guide, they're a weaponized vocabulary designed to bridge the gap between I'm overwhelmed and I am victorious. The core lesson is that worship is a legal right that allows the supernatural to intervene in the natural. It's about achieving spiritual victory through the intentional use of praise. The guide insists that if you release high praises, the enemy is defeated. It's a bold, almost audacious claim. It suggests that the most productive thing you can do in a crisis isn't necessarily to hustle harder, but to worship louder. So, I'll leave you with this thought to chew on while you're walking to your next class. If your words are actually declarations that shape your reality, what have you been legislating lately? Are you declaring your defeat, or are you picking up the two-edged sword of the Psalms? Class dismissed. Don't forget to read the fine print on Psalm 18. There's a lot of meteorology in there that'll blow your mind. See you next time.